If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am The Wiz, and I'm here to review the 2013 coming-of-age film, The Way, Way Back, starring Steve Carell, Toni Collette, Sam Rockwell, and Liam James, directed by Nat Faxon and Jim Rash. So, if I read this correctly, this is a film that's from some first-time directors, and this actually got some really good reviews. It reviews very well on both IMDb and Letterboxd, so this is kind of rare for first-time directors. There are some that do outstanding movies, but most really good directors kind of build their way up. Like, for example, the first movie that Spielberg did was THX 1138. I haven't seen it, but I've heard mixed things. Same thing with James Cameron. He did Piranha 2. I'm not even going to ask. The common parlance to most people think that they were these great directors were always great. That's not necessarily the case. They usually build themselves up to that point. There are some film directors that got it like right out of the gate really well. Some first-time movies. Let's go with the popular ones first. Reservoir Dogs, that is Quentin Tarantino's first directed film. Donnie Darko from Richard Kelly. Gone Baby Gone from Ben Affleck. That's actually a pretty good movie. I actually like that movie quite a bit. The Evil Dead with Sam Raimi. But for me, best films from first-time directors, I would go Being John Malkovich from Spike Jonze. Of course, you have to use Citizen Kane with Orson Welles. Sidney Lumet from 12 Angry Men. And I think my favorite, honestly, if I'm to think about this right now, my favorite when it comes to a first-time director is probably Charles Laughton from The Night of the Hunter. The Night of the Hunter is a movie that I think gained more popularity and more love as time went on. This is weird because I do not like horror, and it's a horror film. It is a powerful, moving, and scary movie at certain times about two kids trying to run away from like a murderous preacher. And it sounds silly, but it's acted really well, and it's just a really well done movie. Beautiful movie to watch too. So if you have not seen Night of the Hunter, that is from a first time director, I would say go check that out. That is something I would like to have Kim or Zero check out because I actually really like that movie. It's fantastic. Alright, so let's get into the review of The Way, Way Back, directed by Nat Faxon and Jim Rash. Before we get to the review, let's get to the plot. The film is about Duncan, a very awkward, shy and unhappy kid who is going on summer vacation to a beach house with his mom, played by Toni Collette, and his stepdad, played by Steve Carell. The movie is basically about him coming out of his shell or trying to gain some independence of his own while trying to fight his way out of his mother's shadow. Duncan is portrayed as incredibly awkward, very shy, incredibly unsure of himself, but he's also basically bossed around a lot. The movie is the struggle of him trying to get out of that, essentially. Alright, so let me get into my 3 points. My first point when it comes to The Way, Way Back is that the family scenes are filled with incredibly uninteresting characters. Way, Way Back has a bunch of problems in this movie, and the first is that not one family character, whether it is the mother, the stepfather, the stepdaughter, or even Duncan, are really not that interesting. Duncan is portrayed as a quiet, very shy, but also pretty unlikable. Some might say that, well, that's because of his shyness. He's not able to branch himself out to make him seem more likable. But the movie still has to do something to have you like this kid. And both the performance by Liam James and the screenwriting doesn't do that great of a job. In fact, I think it does kind of a poor job at showing that the character is someone you want to follow despite him having a terrible issue with shyness and expressing himself. In these scenes, the film also really gravitates on comedy that is based on embarrassment and I guess cringiness. Maybe? It's more embarrassment. The kid is constantly being embarrassed by his mom and his stepdad. When he is out and about, he's riding a girl's bike with frills and a pink basket. He has no social skills whatsoever. He is just not doing well in that end. And the movie does really nothing to make you feel bad, unless you just feel bad because he's going through this. I'll get a little personal. I am very much like that character when I was younger. I was very awkward. I was not sociable at all. I didn't like being around people, and I didn't know how to talk to people. And I was resentful for that. I'm not going to say I didn't treat people well, but I made a point not to talk to anybody because I was deeply afraid of how they were going to think of me and how they're going to react to me and how they're going to treat me. I had that kind of predisposition saying like, oh, wow, this reminds me of me. And I still didn't like Duncan in this movie. I thought he was wholly uninteresting and someone I just did not care about. And the film doesn't do anything to make you feel anything for this guy. It does what I would call plot centering, and where basically the film is more interested in advancing the plot than advancing the character. This is a clear issue with Duncan when it comes to that. The film at no point makes you want to grow and like Duncan at all. It relies on you to say, oh, this poor kid, he's so awkward, he's so quiet, oh my God. But it doesn't do the stretch of making you identify with that character in a more granular level. That's why even when he was going through his quote-unquote change, I'll get to that, it just didn't seem believable, and it just didn't seem that interesting, or emotionally it did not resonate with me at all. As for the other characters, I mean, we have the mother, who essentially is basically a settler. And I think the worst casted and the worst written character in this movie is the stepdad, played by Steve Carell. First off, Trent is supposed to be a macho, arrogant, self-assured person who thinks he knows everything that the mother is apparently very attracted to. And it's kind of hard to believe that was Steve Carell. Yeah, he's got like the short, cropped, gray hair with the stubble beard and everything. But everything else is completely unbelievable. I don't believe him as to be a womanizer. And the movie does portray him as such at certain points in the movie. And the way that his voice is and the way he acts in the film doesn't make me believe that not only is he that way, but others like being around him. I found him incredibly insufferable, and it was just, to me, it was incredibly obvious what the script wanted him to be. And I think Carell could not pull it off in the slightest. One other thing I had an issue with, and we'll get off this topic, is the eventual love interest of the movie. Coming-of-age films has cliches. They all do. It depends on how different you're going to make those cliches to make it work. Cliche with this love interest is she is the one girl in the group that is a lot like Duncan, but is considered the not as pretty girl or the not as sociable girl that falls for Duncan, even though Duncan doesn't really do much when it comes to bridging that relationship. And on top of that, this girl was the prettiest of the four popular girls, where I would look at that and go, well, that makes no sense. Like, she's clearly the prettiest of them, of all of them. So that's weird. Right then and there's a bit of unbelievability in there. On top of that as well, this is another one that has an issue with plot centering, because there really is nothing in this character that I could see other than she feels bad for the main character that she would fall for or want to be around the guy. Duncan is still incredibly quiet, very short, very, kind of rude, and she still wants to be around him. I don't get it. And it's just a cliche from these types of films that is when it's not done right, it's insufferable to watch. Okay, so for my second point, the film improves when it's in the water park. So, parts of the film are in the family beach house. The other parts of the film are in the water park called the Water Wiz. Yeah, I got a kick out of that, but let's not get into that. When the film is in the Water Wiz, it's actually pretty entertaining. You've got funny characters that are kooky and kind of entertaining. You finally get one character in the film that is likable and that you actually want to watch doing things. Now, they go through another trope of these types of films, is the cool adult who understands the kids, but even so, he is really the only likable character in this film that is one of the main characters. He's funny, he's pretty charming, and the film kind of picks up when he's around. So in that case, the film improves on that end. But when it comes to developing Duncan into being more self-assured and being less shy, the plot centering still happens. It's just a little more entertaining when it's in the Water Whiz. I actually liked these parts of the film. I actually thought they were pretty entertaining and at some points funny. There's just not enough of it. My feeling, honestly, of this film is that they centered a film around that water park, and they put the best stuff in that water park. For some reason, they then said, well, I really like coming-of-age films. Let's just put stuff around that and make it a much more emotionally resonant film, and they failed that part. And they utterly failed that part. I really think they could have written this to be exclusively in the water park, but talk about Duncan and his issues with his family and how they're treating him and everything. And it could have worked. The way it is now, the water park is really a reprieve for me in the movie to not deal with the family. Now, some of you will probably say, well, isn't that the point? The family is utterly insufferable. He doesn't like being around them. He's not happy around them. Wouldn't it make sense for you to actually not want to be around there either? Sure. But the reason why the family scenes are bad is not because it's uncomfortable. It's because they're not written and acted very well. And that's my issue with those scenes, and why I think the water park scenes are probably the best scenes in the film. Third point, Sam Rockwell only makes this enjoyable. And this is the character I'm talking about. Sam Rockwell's character, Owen, who is the cool adult who understands the kids that Duncan kind of gravitates towards. He makes this film enjoyable. He makes this film entertaining. And that's just how Sam Rockwell is. Everything that Sam Rockwell is in, he turns out to be really good in the movie, despite the quality of the writing. Now, the writing of this film is still pretty pointed and obvious. The minute that you are introduced to Owen when it comes to dialogue, even when you see Owen for the first time, you know right away he's going to be that guy for that character. So in that, it's pretty contrived. But Rockwell's character is so enjoyable that it kind of washes away that issue that I have. And that's the thing with coming-of-age films. Of course, there's probably going to be some tropes, but it relies on great writing and the actor that is playing the character to pull it off to make it charming. And Sam Rockwell, of the main characters, is the only one who does this. I think Sam Rockwell is pretty good in the film. He's the only one that really makes this watchable for me in this. Okay, so if you are watching this on YouTube, this is the special segment we have for the YouTube reviews where I go over a scene in the film to illustrate the point that I have when it came to my points. This is going to be a little tough because my issues with the film is in its totality. One or two scenes are really not going to illustrate fully the point I have. But I want to illustrate the points when it came to two characters. That is Trent, played by Steve Carell, and that is Owen, played by Sam Rockwell. I'm going to start with Trent, and I'm going to show this scene right now where it's supposed to show Trent in his arrogance and his machismo and how he's trying to ingratiate himself to his family. Go ahead and take a look at this scene.
Watch that. Buddy, any chance you were on top of my car?
No?
Okay. Because there's a dent in the roof. Big dent. It popped out. It was fine. I was just wondering if you know anything about that.
Oh, we did have bags up there, honey.
That's true. That's true. We did. Fair enough. That was probably it, right?
Hey, Pam, you need a hand?
Oh, no, thank you. We've got a system going on here.
Yeah, got a good team here, right? Good team.
It's adorable. Can you pass me something to eat, sweetie?
Now, like I said in the beginning, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to really articulate as to why I don't believe this, but I look at this scene specifically, and I just do not believe Steve Carell as this character at all. First off, he just does not have the physical appearance or build for it. Secondly, the voice, to me, is off. And that's just Steve Carell's voice, I get it. But I just do not buy him as a womanizing, macho type of person. And third, he is utterly insufferable in this movie. The point of this film, sometimes the best thing to do to point out a person's flaws is to make him somewhat likable and to find reasons for the audience to actually like the person, even though he's clearly doing wrong. And Trent, played by Steve Carell, it is just completely ill-suited for this task. So let's get into the next scene involving Owen. Owen is played by Sam Rockwell, and This is why I think the film, when it is in the water park, it jumps up in quality, and I think it's a much better film when it's in here. And it's basically because Sam Rockwell essentially owns the character, even though I don't think the character is very well written at all. But he just owns the character and lives through it and goes through it. So check out this scene involving Owen and the way back.
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
What?
Yeah, you're gonna have to take off. We're getting complaints. You're having way too much fun. It's making everyone uncomfortable.
Okay.
Hey, whoa. I'm just kidding. Wow, that wasn't even my best stuff. Are you for real? Listen, I can tell you're a complete awe of our picnic table. It's one of a kind, except for the 200 other ones here exactly like it. There's more to the park to be seen. First things first, as much as I'm a fan of Toughskins, we gotta get you a swimsuit. Seriously, when's the last time you bought jeans?
My mom buys my jeans.
Good. Always take things literally. How's that working out for you? Does that get you laid? Come on.
Right. So, again, the same thing with Trent and Steve Carell. I'm going to say it's really hard to really articulate in one scene exactly how I feel. But instantly, the mood and the way that the film is shot and the way that Sam Rockwell carries himself as Owen is an instant improvement. Yes, the character is supposed to be much more likable, but he has his own stereotypes and has his own issues. But Rockwell plays the character so well that even if you have those issues, he is still likable in the film, and that he is just instantly watchable when you're watching the film. And with that, you kind of warm yourself up to Duncan himself. It's just that the problem is the film wants you to believe that the totality of Duncan works the way it should, but it really doesn't. Duncan is just as insufferable at the end when he's with his family as he is in the beginning. He's just better at the water park. The film wants you to believe, in a certain sense, that Duncan will be okay after this. I don't see how you can see that in that film. The Way Back is supposed to be a somewhat melancholy but happy ending. I think the film just fails on that end, to that certain sense. So, yeah, these are the differences I see with Steve Carell's performance and Sam Rockwell's performance, where I think, honestly, the film should have just been set in the water park and just excised the entire family in the film. In my opinion, at least. So who do I recommend this for? I recommend this film if you like Sam Rockwell. Like I said in the third point, he makes this film enjoyable. I like him in this movie, and I think he's really the best part of this film, like bar none. And if you really enjoy coming-of-age films, I'm not saying that this film is terrible, but if you just want to binge coming-of-age films, and that's all you want to watch, yeah, okay, give it a shot. Maybe you will like it. Maybe you're comfortable with the tropes. Maybe you're okay with it, but with the things that it keeps doing. And maybe you won't have problems with the issues that the film has. But, like, I would say you would really have to be into coming-of-age films to actually enjoy this. I would not recommend this for. If you are tired of the cliches of coming-of-age films, yeah, like, this film is loaded with cliches. Let's get past the main character. We have the pretty girl who's the love interest who just so happens to be into the main character, even though the main character shows nothing that could possibly interest the girl. You have the child who wants to go back to his father who divorced his mother, and you can guess what happens at a certain point when he finds out about the father. You have the arrogant stepdad who is not a nice person that is trying to ingratiate himself to him but is not doing a great job. And you have the mother who is utterly clueless to what's going on and why. Also clingy and attaching and doesn't really understand where his kid's going through and is going through her own things as well. And there are other side characters that are pretty much walking cliches too. Here's another cliche. The kids talk like adults, but the adults act like kids. Some films it works, others it's just really tiring, but yeah, this film is loaded with cliches, and if you are tired of them, I'd say avoid it. I would not recommend this if you do not like your plot points to be obvious. Within 5 minutes, I could tell you what happened throughout the film. Within 5 minutes. 5! It was super obvious what was going to happen in this film. It was super obvious what was going to happen to Trent and his mom. It was super obvious what they're going to do with Duncan when Owen was involved. who Owen was going to be at a certain point in the film. All super obvious. Now again, there are films that are super obvious but become really charming because they do more as the film goes on. This film did not do it. It was just super obvious as to what they were doing throughout the entire film. And this is sad because then you just wait for the plot to just go along. Overall, I do not recommend The Way, Way Back. With the exception of Sam Rockwell, I found this film to be boring. I found it to be pretty lifeless, cliched, and there were a lot of issues I had with the film. Again, Sam Rockwell was the only thing I liked, and his character was the only thing I liked in this film. Liam James, who plays Duncan in the film, I think he just didn't have a great range to him in this film. He kind of keeps the same face. He doesn't evolve the character in an acting sense. The script is pretty lackluster in this, especially when it comes to the family. So when that emotional resonance is supposed to come when he's starting to break out of his shell, it really falls flat. And that also is because it's cycling through the same cliches as it goes throughout the entire film. So overall, I do not recommend The Way, Way Back. I just did not enjoy this film at all. I'm not saying it's terrible, but Sam Rockwell is really the only thing that made this film enjoyable, and he's not in it enough. Put it that way. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you like what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.